Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rembach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because we have somebody on the show today who really is going to give us some insight on what it means to be the chief. Rick Miller was born and raised just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. He is the oldest of 3 boys who were raised primarily by their father, as Rick's mother was hospitalized for much of his youth. Professionally, Rick's dad served as a professional human resources leader in the only non-union manufacturer in central Massachusetts. Rick has been described by many as a different kind of turnaround specialist. Rick describes that difference as his balanced focus on human capital and financial capital, and Rick credits his father for that strategy. The common theme throughout Rick's career has been a focus on building highly productive teams. He actually started that practice in high school and college sports and continued in his early professional life. Rick started his career in computer sales, where he quickly moved up first into general management and then on to turnaround management as a specialty. In the first 27 years of his career, Rick applied his craft to companies in different industries ranging from a startup to a Fortune 10 multinational, AT&T, earning a reputation as a turnaround expert, a servant leader, and a go-to chief. Rick's legacy has been built around creating powerful teams that achieve sustainable growth. Rick has proven that sustainable growth is achievable in any organization with appropriate focus on the 6 C's: customers, costs, capital, communities, and a culture where employees can achieve sustainable growth too. Rick currently serves as an executive coach and confidant in a company he founded 11 years ago. He also speaks publicly at colleges and companies on how to build powerful teams that can achieve sustainable growth. He shares the secrets of his strategy in the recently released book, Be Chief. It's a choice, not a title. Named an Amazon #1 new release in both leadership training and business management. Rick has earned a bachelor's degree from Bentley University and an MBA from Columbia University. Rick has been married for 36 years, and he and his wife, Diane, have proudly raised 2 public servants. Their son, Jack, currently serves as a press secretary for Congressman Amy Barra in Washington, D.C., and their daughter, Casey, teaches in a bilingual 2nd grade class in New London, Connecticut. Rick and Diane live in Morristown, New Jersey. Rick, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I'm ready, willing, and able.
I appreciate the fact that you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Well, current passion is all about a service project that really kind of kicked off with the book. In prior years, I've focused on kids and helping kids. I actually started a nonprofit, which I ran for about 10 years as CEO, focused on kids with diabetes. It was a wonderful success. More recently, I'm focused on helping kids with special needs. And thanks for referencing the book. It looks great, by the way, right back there over your shoulder. And just to let everybody know, all proceeds of that book go to help kids with special needs. So my focus right now is on kids with special needs, their teachers. We'll talk about that later on. But right now, it's kids and special needs is the passion of I wouldn't say of the day, because it's been of the year. So new year, new challenges, but special needs focus is going to go on for the next couple of years.
Well, and so for me, when I was reading about the book and preparing for our interview together, and so for me, for those that aren't aware, I mean, the education that I get by having some of these phenomenal guests on the show is tremendous, and sometimes it hits home in a lot of ways. And you shared a story about Melissa really being one of your mentors, and if you could just share that a little bit.
Sure, happy to. I share in the book the story of a wonderful 6-year-old girl who was actually one of my greatest teachers. She was a 6-year-old girl. When I first met her, she was in a wheelchair. She had cerebral palsy. I met her in a rehabilitation hospital where I had volunteered to work with a physical therapist to work in this 100-degree heated pool to help kids that had muscles that were just very tight. Now, this is what Melissa looked like when I first met her in the pool. Her hands were clenched and they were up by her shoulders. And she actually had one dream. Her dream was to fully extend her arms, to grab a little Nerf basketball and drop it in a net and score 2 points, right? That's all Melissa wanted to do. So when I met Melissa, though, I should back up just a little bit. When I first saw her, though, she was in a wheelchair off to the side waiting for her turn to get into the pool, right? We had been working with another youngster at that point. But what struck me right away when I first met her years ago was that when she was wheeled in, everybody on the staff who had known Melissa prior to me volunteering came over to say hello. She was a magnet for people. They came over, said hello, went by, and then she sat very serenely looking at us in the pool, waiting her turn. I mean, she had a calmness about her that struck me. Yet when she got in the pool, she was one of the hardest working people I've ever met with. She was focused. She was at the tasks. You could see her intensity. At the same time, she was very generous with her smile. She was always very grateful. Whenever we were done with our session, she would say thank you to the physical therapist and thank you to me. We worked together for 6 months for her to take and fully, that first day, by the way, we got her right arm extended about 5 inches. 1 hour of work in a 100-degree heated pool. So when I think about people that I admire, I think about people who are chiefs, people who are powerful. We'll talk about power in a bit. I think about power who are people who are accepting of their situation, who are hardworking, who can be gracious, who can be generous, who can give to others. And I view those people as role models. So if that's the criteria, I think about someone like Melissa, and she had an impact on me. I'm talking about her decades later. In fact, the book is dedicated. The money is going to special needs kids because of Melissa. And I think of the lessons that she taught about how to, with whatever cards you're dealt, play those cards to the best of your ability with a smile on your face. I get goosebumps when I think about her to this day. And if I get teary-eyed, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I told you that's why for me, it just hit home. I shared with you, my wife was in a car accident when she was 8 years old and she's in a wheelchair, but yet this woman, is a CPA. She is the mother of 3 children that she carried that were all delivered via C-section.
Yep.
And when you start looking at that triumph, she doesn't like me to tell her story. I mean, she's very stoic. She's like, I'm just me.
Yeah.
But talking about teary-eyed gets to me too. But I think for me, I often have to stop and self-reflect, just like you were doing with Melissa, and talk about that impact, talk about that effect, talk about all of those things. And in the book, in the beginning, you talk about some questions that are important for us to be able to ask of ourselves, such as, how can living my values bring out the best in me and those around me? How can I develop insight and learn more about myself? How can I use creativity to increase my positive impact? And how can I use discipline to manage better? And how can I support others to increase their positive impact? And I think you hit all of that when you were talking about Melissa. However, when you start thinking about levels of importance and the things that really are differentiators, they all can't do that. I mean, while they're all important, which one kind of stands out as one that's like, this is the unique component that I find in a lot of chiefs?
Well, we can boil all 5 of those down, right? You listed 5 actually into different words, but to kind of bring them together. Chiefs are people who connect what they do to who they are, right? Your wife, Melissa, gifted people we meet every day. They connect what they do to who they are. So I generally would say that it's important to understand who you are, because you're different than me. Our people we know are all different. So at the core of this, it's who are you, right? So that would go to 2 particular elements. I spend a lot of time in the book talking about insight and values, right? Let's talk about those 2 if we could, okay? So values was actually the first question, right? And values are so important because I regularly talk to people and I say, what are your values? And they will give me a long list. Sometimes it'll be a short one. More often than not, it's a long one. And I will stop and I'll say, but what, and my habit, right? What's your core 4? And they'll look at me and I say, yeah, what's your north, south, east, and west? What are those that you hold most dear? And many people will stop. And the people that I work with, I'll do the same thing. And I'll ask this question. I say, there's a huge benefit in terms of the power that you will feel once you know what you stand for. Because once you figure out where you stand, what you stand for, you can take a stand. And when you take a stand, you are powerful. So that's very much who we are at our core. By the way, very much related to insight. Insight is synonym for self-understanding. And we talk a lot about in the book and generally about how do you build self-understanding. Everybody says, know yourself. And everybody says, okay, well, how do I do that? And I believe there's 5 areas that you can invest in to know yourself better. I think you know yourself more when you're present, when you choose to be present, right? I think you know yourself more when you choose to be accepting. We talked about Melissa, was very accepting of her situation. You know yourself more when you are generous, when you are grateful, and when you choose at certain times to be still, to listen to the voice inside you. So to answer your question directly, it is important for you to know who you are so that when you make these choices about what to do, they're consistent with your voice inside, your values. But first, you have to take a little bit of time to figure those out.
Yeah, I think that time component is really interesting. And I think there's also an exploration component that has to be involved with it. And maybe that's where this whole fear factor comes in play for a lot of people, is that they have fear stop them from doing that exploration in order to be able to find these things out. Do you find that to be a case?
Yeah, I don't know often that it's fear for many people. I just think it's the question they haven't asked themselves. I mean, if somebody asked you, what do you stand for? Well, because maybe you haven't thought about it, many people will come up, well, I stand with family and ethic. You'll come up with a set of words. And there's an exercise that I use that I'll put 50 great words on a piece of paper, and I'll hand it to somebody, and I'll say, are any of these words that you disagree with? And they're all, they're all great words. They're all great attributes. No, I don't disagree with any of them. I said, which of the 4 do you stand for most? And then you have to stop and think. And I said, well, here's the benefit. Here's the benefit. I said, go to the 10 people who know you best and ask them to each give you 4 attributes of what they think you stand for. So you can do the math. They could come up with 40 different words in some scenario, right? 10 different people give you 4 different words, 40 different answers. I said, that's not a bad thing. But if you want to stand for something, right? If you want people to know, you know what, when I think of Jim, I think of family, I think of faith, I think of trustworthy, whatever those attributes you are. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you asked those same 10 people, and rather than give you 40 different answers, maybe they gave you 10. And maybe some said kindness, and well, those are kissing cousins. You're still going in the same direction, right, with those. So my point is, it's a choice. And again, the book is titled, Be Chief. It's a choice, not a title. The choices we make about taking the time, and I don't think it's out of fear so much, Jim. I think it's more about to take the time and do the work to say, you know what, I can't stand for 50 things, right? I can't be viewed as 40, 50. But if I get it down to 4, then maybe people will bleed over to 5, 6, 7. But am I more powerful in the way I talk, in the way I speak, in the way I act, in the way I think, if I'm constantly reinforcing what is most dear to me? Now, my core 4 are going to be different than yours or anybody else's. But the exercise of doing it, the people that I work with normally come back and say, thank you, right? I wouldn't have taken this time, and I have a confidence now in where I go and how I go there that's based on me, not a well-intentioned spouse, not a relative, not a good friend, not the media who's always chirping at me, this is what you should be doing. How do I develop my own confidence? I think it starts with values.
As you were talking, I did start thinking, though, that it does require some vulnerability to be able to go and ask those people those questions, because you might be afraid of what what they're coming back with, even though they're all positive words. Because, for me, I would have to actually go through that exercise, and I think I'm going to ask you for those 50 words so that I can actually do that, because I do want to know what people think are I would like to get it down to that core 4. I have a rough idea and some intuition, because I think as you go through life, you kind of start centering around certain ones. However, it would be nice to see what others perceive. And that is an important, piece of feedback in order to be able to get, so that you can do exactly what you were just saying, is that, now I can take a stand.
And I think people feel more confident when they do. And it's about your confidence, right? In a world where you're trying to maintain an equilibrium, when everything around you is constantly shifting and changing, having that insight and having those values set, I use that as the core of a topic that I call the compass, right? So how do I use a tool to keep me in my, towards my due north, which is what a compass does, when everything around me is shifting, everything around me is shaking. I get new information all the time and things I try to hold true to. Well, I'm constantly getting all this feedback. How do I stay, let's use a boating analogy. How do I keep my ship pointed in the direction that I want to keep pointed in when the waves are coming in from all angles and it's up and it's down and all around? How do I stay centered? And again, element of being stillness, by the way, you can achieve by walking in nature, by listening to music, or by classic meditation. However you stay centered, particularly these days, really, really important.
Well, in addition, I started even thinking about when I've been within certain organizations and things just didn't feel right and didn't seem right to me, and I felt like an oddball. It was really going back because of I didn't share the same values with the organization that I was with. And unfortunately, I didn't know that I needed to really put my efforts into leaving that organization. Many times I would stay and, be irritated, and I would, be the one who was trying to change things when, maybe that wasn't really where I should have been putting my effort.
Oh, it's such a great point. I mean, I have certainly, and I tell the story in the book, there are certainly at least one organization that I left when it became clear that my values and the values that were at least being practiced, and it's not the values that show up on a piece of paper or on the wall or in your wallet insert. All organizations, if you boil them down, and I've done work with startups to multinationals and a lot of different industries, a lot of organizations will put their values out there for on a website or whatever else, and many of them look the same, right? It's teamwork, it's respect for the individual, it's innovation, it's focus on the customer. I mean, you and I could probably come up with 10, and of those 10, everyone's got 5. The question isn't whether they're on the card or on the website. The question is, are they in practice in the organization? And I think for those of us who are values-based, if we find ourselves in a situation where they're not practiced, that's when we have to make a decision about how much we're going to invest in those organizations. And oh, by the way, that's one of the key business topics in the book, is the lack of engagement. I mean, right now in the United States, 7 out of 10 workers are not fully engaged at work. They feel powerless. And many times it's because what's being said and what's being done from a values perspective isn't quite matching up. And people are feeling that, and they're bringing their B game to the office, not their A game. And when organizations can do things to have employees bring their A game, that's the result. Whether it's a startup or a multinational, you can get organizations to achieve. And that's probably why I'm called an unconventional turnaround specialist, because that is my job. I generally walk into places where things are really bad, or at least people perceive they're really bad. So why would we ever go on the outside to bring in this guy? And those are the lessons, frankly, that my dad taught me back at the kitchen table growing up in central Massachusetts, because it is a balance of financial capital. You certainly have to look at those numbers, but it's the people, it's the human capital that will enable financial capital success. So I'm going around a little bit. I apologize. I maybe had 2 cups of coffee this morning. I'm pretty pumped up to be with you, so I apologize.
I'm glad you're pumped up. I mean, that's awesome. Well, one of the things that's kind of stood out to me too is you mentioned something about, I think the phrase you use is for those of us that are values-based. Well, if we're not values-based, what are we?
Well, again, I think it's on a spectrum, okay? It's not people who are values-based are good, people who are not values-based are bad. I'm not going there. I'm talking about the people who, for example, don't use their values actively to make choices, like consciously, right? So I believe that those people many who I've worked with have gone through and picked their core 4 and are constantly reminded, am I speaking consistently with those values? Am I writing consistently am I acting consistently with those values? Because that's where power comes from. When you line up how you think, how you feel, how you speak, write, and act, and if the framework is those values, then you are clearly not only values-based, but values action-oriented. There are a lot of other people who just don't think a lot about their values. Yeah, they're generally kind of bumping along. They're not bad people, but the focus, right, which I always translate to power, true definition of power. We haven't talked about it yet, but it's so important. when I say the word power, many people go in their minds to yesterday's definition of power, which was authority, control, that came from positions like chief executive officer, chief financial officer. The term chief, in fact, is interesting to people only because of the power associated with it. Wow, if I'm a chief, then I must have power. Well, that's one kind of power, but today's version of power is so much more attainable by everyone, because a power today is about energy, right? Power today is about confidence. It's about clarity. It's about influence. It's about impact. So any of those five you can have if you're on the front line of a company, or you're not even part of a company. You're just who you are. But what choices could you make to increase your energy, your confidence, and your clarity? You meet people who are clear, who are energetic and confident. Do they have an impact on you? They do on me. That's Melissa, right? She had an impact on me because of just her confidence in what she was trying to do. Do those people make a big impact? They sure do. And those are the people I love to learn from and surround myself with, because it is a student-teacher thing. I think I'm there to share with them, like I did when I walked into the heated pool at the rehab facility. I thought I was there to help and to teach, when in fact I was the student. But that happens all the time.
Well, and as you were talking, I started thinking about how much inspiration we actually get from those people. And even when you were explaining it, I started thinking about authentic. Those people are authentic. They say they are who they say they are, and they behave in that way, and there's consistency, and therefore I can trust them. I mean, all those core foundational building blocks on how you actually create a culture that's successful. But when I start talking about these things, I automatically start thinking also about quotes in my head, and we love them on the show. We'd love to hear the favorites from the guests that are on this show, because oftentimes they inspire us. Is there one or two that you can share?
Well, one of the ones that I use a lot is Ralph Waldo Emerson's famous quote from Self-Reliance, which is, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds," right? And so many times when you hear that quote, by the way, they will forget the word foolish. But the true quote is, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." Translate that says, be a lifelong learner. There are things that you don't know. Certainly, go after something with full intensity. But when you learn something new, right, when you open up to a new truth and you become deeper and broader in a particular area, don't be afraid to change your position, right? If you're concerned about, well, what will somebody else think? Right? If you learn something and says, you know what, I was wrong, or I need to adjust from going north to northeast or northwest because I've learned something new. Don't be foolishly consistent. No one has figured it all out. And if they tell anyone that's told you that they have figured it all out, run away. They're dangerous, right? We are all learning every day. So I love that, because the lightheartedness of a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And I don't like to think of myself as small-minded. So it's a reminder: open up and be open to all input.
I really like that, and that actually reminded me of one of the quotes that I like, which is when all learning stops.
Well said.
When you start thinking about all of this, issues that you've run into, these humps that you've had to get over, and all of those, they've had to have defined where you are today and really solidify those values so you could take that stand. Is there a time, though, when you've gotten over the hump that you can share with us?
Oh boy, there's plenty of humps. I thought you were going to go in a different direction. So let me answer the question that I want to answer, not the one you just asked. My core four, just so you know, are truth, service, equality, and connection. Those are my core four, right? So I would, and I'll go to your question, but I want to get those out there, not because I think they are the right answers. They're my right answers. Yours could be totally different. But the fact that I know those so clearly, and I live, eat, sleep, breathe, and dream them, right? They are my core four. And everything I do, that's the filter that goes in my speech, how I write, how I act. So when I hit those humps, and as I say, as a turnaround individual, I've run into some humps. I'll give you two ends of the spectrum. In one case, I was hired during the go-go days of the internet boom to take a company public. I was going to be the gray hair to come in and work with a wonderful group of primarily 22-year-olds who were destined to take a company and all be billionaires. When I walked in just before it burst, it was around 2000. The board that brought me in said, hey, this is the right move. So I had my first employee discussion, and the first hand went up by a wonderful 21-year-old who said, can you tell me how many months it will be until we're all millionaires? Okay. NASDAQ crashed about a month later. And over the next 18 months, right, the market lost 68% of its value. During that time, the people who were questioning why the old guy was here weren't questioning that anymore, right? We were able to build, and this was a wonderful millennial team that learned how to serve customers, who learned how to pull together. And in this particular case, despite the market going in the opposite, we went from a .com to a .bomb, right? It was crazy. Customers wouldn't return our calls. Everybody was very quiet. People were very scared. We went on a roadshow and we raised $85 million because we convinced Wall Street that we were worth betting on, this wonderful group of 21 and 22-year-olds. We brought in some other diverse ages and things like that. But we raised it. We took our IPO and we went public in the middle of the crash, right? We operated for 2 years. We got products out. We served customers, and then we sold the business. But when most of our customers were going out of business, right? And we had to tell the story in the book. How, when the bombs are bursting around you, figuratively, not literally, we'll talk about literally in a minute, how do you pull together a group of people who have no experience with tough times to serve customers, to pull together and actually drive results? Because all of a sudden we had share owners, right? So those are the stories that I tell in the book about how people come together. By the way, all I did was apply the great lessons that my dad taught me at the kitchen table decades earlier, right? Simple lessons that can be reinforced. So that was clearly on one end of the spectrum. And the other, I would say that a big challenge was that when I actually did work in a war zone, I was the president of a unit that earned the right to provide a public safety wireless network that was deployed throughout all of Baghdad and 70% of Iraq in 2005, that allowed people to put up purple thumbs because it was the first time in the country's history that they voted. Right? First time. So my team was the team that was on the ground for years. Now, I was in and out a couple different times, and I tell the story in the book about never confuse titles with power. Because when I arrived at Baghdad Airport in February of 2005, I had the title, right? Yet there was a security detail, and I tell the story in the book, the security detail of people without titles who were responsible to get me successfully to the green zone. The most dangerous road in the world, by the way, was between Baghdad Airport and the green zone in Iraq in the mid-2000s. But they were the chiefs. They were the people who really had the responsibility and the authority and the control for someone who had a title, and all I did was, please just tell me what to do, right? Title meant nothing. The power was with people who were on the front lines. So I'd say that probably qualifies as a situation where it was a bit of a speed bump. Thankfully, we got through safely, and I was well cared for. But the lessons of dealing with startups to multinationals, the talent all around you, the opportunity to help people be more powerful and learn from them as they learn from you, it's everywhere.
And going through the book, I just kept finding myself jumping from these stories from one to another. There's a huge breadth and depth of them. But ultimately it culminates at the end when you start talking about helping folks find their compass, and you talk about establishing your power compass baseline. And then you actually have 25 questions, and these answers to these questions are really going to help you describe yourself. If you could talk a little bit more about that. And I think you even said something about it being online.
It is. And by the way, so I mentioned earlier, I would love people to consider buying the book. The book is fantastic for you or anybody you care about, and all proceeds go to help special needs kids. That said, if you want to measure your power, because I think in business what we learn is if it's important, you measure it. Matter of fact, I say regularly, the language of business is numbers. So the language of business is numbers. So if all this stuff about power and energy and clarity and confidence and influence and impact is important, shouldn't I have a number for each of it? Well, the answer is you can. So you can go online anytime with your smartphone, grab your smartphone, it'll take 3 to 5 minutes, and you can actually get a score, an actual numeric score for how powerful you are. Right? And I call that tool a power compass. And the baseline power compass, as you asked about, the first time you take this tool, you in fact will have a baseline. It will be a starting point. You'll look at the score, and frankly, you'll look at the score and you may have a number of reactions. Some people look at the score and say, well, but what should it be, right? This is a score, but how am I compared to somebody else? Is my score higher or lower than Jim's, higher or lower than Sarah's? Wrong question. The real question is, when you take these 25 questions, how do you feel about your answers? Right? They're very short. But when you answer a question, by the way, you don't have to pass this test in, so you don't have to cheat. Right? You have to be honest. When you answer these questions honestly, you'll kind of come away with your gut telling you something. Your gut will say, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I look at the energy area and the 5 questions they're being asked about how I really build real energy. Yeah, I like my choices. My advocacies don't change a thing. But if you answer the question, and a question honestly, and you go, that's the truth, but I'm not real happy or proud of it, and it probably is impacting my energy, it gives you what? A choice to go back and look at a small change you might make with one of your choices that can increase your confidence, your energy, your clarity, your impact, or your influence. So that's all described in the book, how we apply, and I use 2 quick words with you, which I think are really important. There's a lot of places you can go to get leadership information that is on the supply side, right? Do these 12 things. Here's your 8-point checklist. So there's a wonderful group of writers and researchers, academicians, who can give you a lot on the supply side of leadership, right? I think what's different about this book is it's not about the supply, it's about the apply. Right? I am not an academic. I'm a business guy, right? And I've read a lot. By the way, I referenced probably 20 or 25 of some of the greatest writing is referenced in the book. So I talk about good to great. I mention other authors and people who made impact. But my job is how to help a reader take the stuff that's been supplied and in a simple way, apply it, right? In a startup to a multinational, you're an entrepreneur, you got one person in your company and it's you. How do I actually make this stuff work on the front lines, whether you have bombs bursting around you or not, right? Or market crashes or not. So that's the focus of the power compass. It's really to be very simple. 3 to 5 minutes thought, and it leverages a lot of other deep research that others have done, but people don't have the time to go into the deep research. They want to know, what can I use right now? So I'm a very pragmatic person. I'm a simple business person. And the power compass, whether you get it online, you go to beingchief.com, which is the name of my company, beingchief.com, or you can go to bechief.com, which is the book page. Either way, you can get a link to take the power compass for free, right? And get your own starter set of, okay, what choices am I making? And could I make slightly different choices that will make me more powerful? And the other thing, just real quickly, is there's a piece in the book that is just so powerful. I've come across some research which supports what you and I already know, Jim, right? We already know that when we're surrounded by positive people, we tend to be more positive. Well, in the book, we talk about 2 particular research studies. The work done by Fowler and Christakis, which talks about the happiness effect, which has been well reported on. But there's a particular piece of research done by Sigal Barsavi, who did it when she was at Yale. She's now at Wharton. We talk about the positive emotions spreading at work, right? The real research that she did that shows that when you bring someone positive into a work environment, they affect everyone else. So in the book, we talk a lot about this term of viral engagement, which means sometimes you kind of look up, sometimes bosses can have a big impact on how you show up, but we don't really study as much as we could. What impact does it have if my peer on either side of me is showing up with a positive disposition or is coming in every morning and unloading every negative thought he or she ever had? How does that impact the workforce? So these are things, again, a little unconventional when it gets to turnaround. When I come into an organization, I do look at all the numbers. I dot the I's and cross the T's and balance sheets and P&Ls. But we also spend lots of time looking at the people aspect. Where are teams effective and where are they not? And what small changes could we make to make teams happier, more productive, more engaged, and bringing their A game.
Well, Rick, thanks for sharing that with us. And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Rick, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Rick Miller, are you ready to hoe down?
I'm ready to hoe down.
All right, so what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
One of the areas that I'm looking at is going more deeply actually into meditation. I'm actually considering going to a 5-day silent retreat. I meditate daily, but I think if I go deeper into me and develop an even stronger compass that way, I think that's the next step for me.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Remember that power is never given, it's only taken.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Persistence.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
My network.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners that could be from any genre? Of course, we're going to put a link to Be Chief on your show notes page as well.
I'm a big fan of Adam Grant and his book, Give and Take, because there's a misnomer out there that takers get ahead. He's done the research, another wonderful Wharton professor and good friend. Give and Take by Adam Grant.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Rick Miller. Okay, Rick, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I think what I would bring back is to actually maintain a healthy impatience. I think that there's an opportunity to learn and everything else, and you have to always balance to be patient, which sometimes we're not, or to be kind of frenetic. I love the term healthy impatience because it drives me forward and keeps me centered. I would practice healthy impatience.
Rick, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Sure. Easiest way is the website. Let's go to the book one, bechief.com. There you can download a free chapter. You can take the test. You can read about the nonprofit, the wonderful special needs facility that's going to get all the money from this thing, and you'll get started on your own version, on your own way of being more powerful.
Rick Miller, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.